Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick, and welcome to Her Conversations, Tools for the Awakening Woman. HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She's a woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal, but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her Conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, and soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. So let their words in these conversations embolden and inspire you. This week on Her Conversations, my guest is holistic life coach, soul mama, Nehanda Truscott-Reid. Her service is guiding women through a more conscious and spiritual approach to motherhood. As a mother of 2 young children herself, she has personal experience of the ways that the current system is not serving and honouring women. During our conversation, Nehanda shares how the birth of her first child instigated a shift in the way that she needed to live her life, and also the healing it ignited within her. She speaks about the tools that she gives women so they can communicate their new needs to their support group when they're in the early stages of motherhood, and also the different lessons that she has learned from each of her children, and of course so much more. As always, I begin each episode by asking my guests, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most HER?
The moments that I felt at my most HER were the moments after the birth of each of my children. And I think that passage of, borderline life and death, and the actual, depth of the place that you travel to spiritually in those moments, it's so intense that I think it has the power to bring us back to our purpose and our whole reason for being. It's like, this is life, and this is your purpose, and here you are, a vessel for something greater than yourself. And so, especially after the birth of my son, who's now 9 months old, I was just so overwhelmed with emotion. And it's not the kind of the picture that people paint where it's like, I just loved him so much. It was more just like a connection of self to source, and just feeling like, oh my gosh, like there's something greater than me, of which I am merely a vessel, and it just puts everything back into perspective. Going forward, just on a day-to-day basis, I've tried to build a practice of really mindful breastfeeding with my son. And so that last feed before I put him down to sleep, I really get quiet and calm, and just, lower my heartbeat and really just snuggle him in a really calm, loving way. And that really sets me into a really beautiful space for the rest of my evening once I put him to sleep. So, And it's a similar feeling to doing a shavasana at the end of a yoga session. Like, when you've moved your body and then you reap benefits of that relaxation, that warmth, that resonance, that those are the spaces that I just love to be in. So, yeah.
Can you just tell everyone a little more about your story? How did you get to launch into Soul Mama? What brought you to that point? Where had your life been before that?
So I would say that I've always been a spiritual seeker. From as young as I was reading, I was asking questions, and my questions led me to read various texts and look at different spiritual practices and try different things. I grew up in a Rasta home, but my mum was very supportive of my journey. And so I felt like I had this parallel life where I was kind of looking into all of these deep questions, like, who am I? Why am I here? What is life about? What are we all doing here? And at the same time, I was, I guess, working in the, typical 9-to-5 corporate jobs that had no soul. And I felt like I was leading a double life. I would go into work and put on a mask and speak a certain way and dress a certain way and turn up and do my job. But I didn't feel like it was answering in any way who I am here to be. And I just felt myself feeling very empty and physically drained, And I started the journey of conscious conception with my husband. And when we conceived my daughter, I think that was a turning point for me. It just really gave me the permission to put myself first and to really honor what my energy was telling me. And so when I was really, really tired, or I felt like I needed, to be held, I felt like being pregnant gave me the confidence to actually ask for what I needed, whether it's from him or from work or for myself, to just go within. And that's when I really started to have the disconnect with the work that I was doing at the time. And so I knew I wanted to train in something different. I'd always been doing yoga, so I thought maybe yoga's the thing, and maybe meditation. And I found this holistic life coaching course, and I'd had my eye on it for a while, but it wasn't until I actually had my daughter, went back to work and realized, like, no, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep up the facade. I can't keep this mask on and still be a good mother and still be a good wife and still be a functioning human being. So I quit my job and I trained in this course, and that's what led me to Soul Mama, and really deciding that women going through that transition needed a place for support and for nourishment along that journey, because if allowed to be, it can be a really deep awakening. So that's what led me to creating Soul Mama. Yeah.
Beautiful. And you said that it was after the birth of your first daughter, and then going back into your old job and your old kind of work situation, that you felt that it was like totally impossible for you to continue to be inauthentic.
Yeah.
What do you think has changed in you that meant that you couldn't like kind of blag it anymore? You could do it for her, and then now it was like not possible for you to do that. What do you think shifted?
I think it was a recognition that the future that I'd spoken about and envisioned and planned for was here now. There was that sense of like, me and my husband had spoken about the kind of lives that we wanted to live, the kind of parents we wanted to be. And when we have children, this was what we were going to be doing. And it was that realization that, like, wow, my child is not in the future anymore. She's here right now. And my duty and it's like, there was just that realization that I have to pull everything that I've been putting into the future to my now. And that does not line up with the job that I'm doing or the person that I'm being or how I'm showing up. Like, I just need to get into my power, and I can't wait for that to happen in the next 10 years. It needs to happen now. So yeah, everything that didn't resonate and didn't serve me, and people that just weren't on the vibration that I wanted to, nurture around myself, just fell away. And the job was one of those things. And then the realization that, okay, well, I'm going to now need to step into my power and create something as an alternative. What can that be? And then for the first time in my life, there was the space to really tune in and realize this was something I wanted to do. So yeah, it was that turning point that just gave me that power to make the choice that I always knew I wanted to make anyway. All of the values that I believe and hold about why we're here and what we should be here to do and stepping into our purpose, I couldn't preach that to her if I wasn't living it. And so there was this kind of dawning of like, wow, it's now. You have to step into yourself now. And it gave me the momentum to make that decision. And I was actually working with mostly white middle class men, so it didn't help. Running off to the bathroom to express every 2 hours and having to explain myself, and feeling like I couldn't stay late at work. And so there was a number of things that also led to it feeling like this was no longer sustainable. But it was also that inner push of like, no, step into your truth now. There's no point in putting that off for another however many years. Your moment's now. So that was 3.5 years ago. And yeah, I've been on the journey to self since. So yeah.
And what other things did you notice in terms of a change in yourself as you became a mother? I mean, did it kind of change the relationship or the thoughts about the relationship that you'd had with your own mother?
Everything changed. So yeah, it did. It made me have a much deeper, profound respect for my mother. It healed a lot of underlying resistance that I had held on to from my childhood growing up. So my father and my mum divorced when I was about 10, 11 years old. And growing up mixed race, my mum's white, I felt there was a lot of anger because I didn't feel like I had a kind of a place of belonging. And a lot of that came out in our relationship, even though I would say that we have a really good relationship. But it kind of made me realize from another perspective when I actually had my daughter, how much she did for me, my dad, myself, and my brother who came afterwards. And so the respect I had for her just grew tremendously, and it gave us an opportunity for some deep healing, which I'm grateful for, because she's an amazing grandmother to my children now. But yeah, it changed everything. It changed the relationship with my husband. It changed my outlook on life generally. It changed, my physical self, my spiritual self. I just felt there was a breaking open of who I was holding on to. And it really forced me to release things that weren't serving me, and to get clear on who I want to be and how I want to be, and really start doing the work. I think up until that point, I had been comfortable reading about things and intellectualizing things and discussing things. And then when you actually have a child demanding so much of you, there is no option but to do the actual work or be depleted. And I couldn't go on being depleted. And so by the time I got pregnant with my second child, I had put into practice so much of what I had only up until that point theorized about. And it's what set my foundation in a much more positive way. So I thought, if I can share that with women who can prepare, from preconception, and actually start doing that deep work, that deep healing before you're in the midst of a crying baby, it can just really give you a good foundation. So that's what Mum was for.
I think we touched on it before when we were just kind of speaking before recording, and you were talking about getting women to take off this badge of honor that they might have about suffering when it comes to being a mother. Can you kind of open up about that and just say how Soul Mama helps women soften into any or be more open about what they might be going through?
Yeah, for sure. I think my experience was that when I was being honest about how I was feeling in those first months, which for me was really tough, and this is despite a really thorough preparation, or what I thought was a thorough preparation. And so in my mind, everything had led up to the birth being the destination. So I had done, hypnobirthing and meditation and mantras and yoga and visualizations and, partner work and breath work and all of these things, which I thought, this is going to be my green light to this most amazing experience. And I hadn't given any thought to when my child was actually here. There was nothing put in place for that transition and that recovery period. And so when I was saying to, my mum and my mum-in-law and friends, I'm really struggling, I'm struggling with breastfeeding, I'm struggling with my mood, my energy so low, this is just not how I thought it was going to go. And I kind of felt like there was this pushback of oh, that's not how you should be feeling, or, it's fine, it will pass, or that's normal. And I was like, no one's honoring how I feel. And I was searching for a space where I could be honest and authentic and actually say, yes, of course, my child's a blessing. And of course, I'm grateful and she's healthy and she's well. But, I need to nurture myself now. Where can I go to do that? And so I think you find there's kind of two sides of conversations. You either have women in groups who like to talk about how hard things are, but it kind of becomes a kind of Trump for Trump, like I'm surviving on 3 hours, and it's like it's not about that. Yeah, of course, we're all struggling. We can all relate to that, and it's fine to speak your truth and to do it in a way that you feel you're going to be able to get support on. But I think it was more about realizing what is actually being asked of us. Like, it's not about pushing through that and getting on with it and just sucking it up. Like, all of these ideas that motherhood is supposed to expect from us, I just wasn't feeling that at all. And so I think it's more about honoring how you feel, nurturing yourself through that, and giving people around you, tools to be able to support you. That a lot of time, your partner or your mum or whoever you have around you doesn't know how best to support you. Whereas if you kind of done some of that work already to at least carve out the landscape of what you might want or how you might feel, then you can kind of put those things in place beforehand. I think one of the main things that I speak about is the loss of the village, because motherhood was not designed to be done in this nuclear family, and a lot of women I know are single parents, and that's an even bigger burden. So it's about how can we utilize some of that knowledge, some of the resources that our ancestors tapped into for that journey of motherhood, and kind of bringing it back to a sacred transition, rather than it being this kind of dismissed, just get on with it type of vibe, which is, in my opinion, is where society's going wrong, at least Western society. So yeah, it's honoring where you feel vulnerable and really trying to give yourself the best opportunity to go through that in a stronger, more empowered way.
You talked about like giving your surrounding group, like your mother, your partner, friends, or anyone, tools to kind of assist you when you're feeling a certain way or you're feeling overwhelmed or tired. What kind of things, what did that look like, if you kind of open up on that a bit?
Yeah, so it's one, giving them a warning. In that, I think, especially, if you've got a loving partner, they're going to want to support you, but the way that they might think of supporting you and the way you might need the support might look different. So for me, in the run up to my second child, once I kind of embodied a lot of what I've been trying to share with women, it was kind of really saying, I need permission to not have to be who I've been being, in the sense of, don't expect the house to be cleaned. Don't expect of me that I'm going to be up and dressed every single day. Don't expect that I'm just going to snap back into the routine that we've established for ourselves. Like, I'm going through a very deep transformation, and I'm going to need your patience on that, and your support and your love. So, the things that I really would appreciate is making sure that my water's always going to be topped up. So, every time I sat down to breastfeed, I made sure that I had the equal amount going back in, for example. So if you see my water's getting low, could you please top that up? Could we plan for nourishing meals? My husband did some cooking, I did some cooking, we froze some food, we got some food in, nourishing the body physically with particular foods that are warming to the system is crucial. Being able to save some money for things that I really believed were necessary, things like deep massage and closing the bones and wrapping, and rituals that we're kind of being able to access because of the age that we're in now, but perhaps have lost in a cultural sense, but realizing that these things were really healing to women and are still. And so if there was a way that my husband could have the baby while I do those things, that would be really, really helpful for me. So he was amazing in kind of really, taking the time to listen and understand where he could help. And even if that was, okay, I'm going to go out to work to financially support some of those extra things that we perhaps didn't budget for, that's your role. Then I'm happy for you to put in the way that you feel comfortable, but this is what it needs to look like for me. And with my mum, it was really the support for my daughter in helping ease the transition for her as well. So, you know, having her overnight sometimes and being able to come to my home and help me just with the, you know, the day-to-day of what needed to happen in the house, that was more valuable than anything. Because I feel like this would have happened in a tribe, you know, of women who would be child rearing, and we would all be helping each other, and there would be kind of, you know, rituals that would be happening at different stages of that postpartum recovery. So we need to almost try and mirror that for ourselves in as a supportive way as possible. And it might be friends, it might be that you hire professionals, it might be that you read and then you implement, but there is an opportunity there to kind of tap into that knowledge in a way that supports you.
Thank you for that. That was really good. What do your groups look like, or what does your service look like in terms of the way that you offer help to women?
So I do one-to-one coaching, and that comes from kind of the journey of up until conscious conception. So if you're in that space of wanting to have a child, maybe you've had miscarriages or losses before, and there's the sense of needing to do some work around that, or really tune inwards to making that journey as sacred, as spiritual as possible, then that's when my support kind of kicks in. So it might be looking at trauma that has happened in the past. It might be healing something between you and your partner. It might be preparing the womb, getting physically into the best space possible before you inhabit the new life, and then supporting throughout the pregnancy with, you know, meditations and guided affirmations and visualizations, and just bringing a consciousness to every stage. And then postpartum, I'm building a package at the moment, which is something that women can do at home, you know, online. So they don't have to physically leave their homes or their children to get that support. So that's going to be available in the new year. But then I also do a Soul Mama Circle, which is an opportunity for women to come together, to share, you know, their experiences, and to heal in that physical women's vibrational field that comes together, you know. And so I'm doing those every 2 months. And then I also share a lot of my own personal story on Instagram. And that's been the main place that I've connected with a lot of women who kind of DM me, and we kind of build up a relationship on there too. So I'm at Soul Mama Coach on Instagram.
That's kind of what drew me to you was your Instagram. Like Instagram's algorithm kind of threw you into my feed, or as a recommended person. I was just like fascinated, firstly, by the imagery that you use.
Oh, thank you.
You know, to kind of get your just to get your message across. And that's what really caught my eye, because sometimes motherhood can be very painted and depicted in a very kind of sterile kind of way. For instance, and it's like nothing to do with her because she's a public figure and this is what she's got to do. But when Prince William's wife, Catherine, had her last child, she'd just had that child like hours earlier, right? And they wheeled the girl out, and she was there with her hair all done and a thing, and smiling. And I'm just like, hang on a minute, you just had that child within the last 12 hours. Like, do you really want to be doing this? It was just seemed a little bit, you know. And for anyone who, and I'm speaking to someone who doesn't have any children, but just trying to put two and two together. It's like for anyone who didn't have an idea of all the real thing about childbirth that goes on behind the scenes, would just think, well, if I don't just snap back into my jeans and step out with my hair all glossy with a baby on my arm, then I'm failing.
Exactly.
And that's what I like about your images. Like, you see women, you see their bodies, you see them breastfeeding, you see them naked, and that's what it is, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is that, you know, it's such a raw experience. That's why I believe that is so powerful, because it doesn't care where you think you are in your career. It doesn't care what kind of designer clothes you've got in your wardrobe. You are still going to have to go through this rites of passage. And yes, you can be disconnected from it. You know, you could still not come into your body. You could still have a baby and still try and snap back, and you do all of those kinds of things. But it's an invitation to really connect with what's real. And so women who don't allow themselves to go into that, you know, there's women who don't even look at their vaginas, you know, they don't want to see what's happened. They don't want to feel it. They don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to experience breastfeeding, and that's fine. But for women who do, I feel like there is such a rich experience that is able to be tapped into for you if you take that invitation and that call to go into the mess of it. You know, it's a beautiful chaos, but it's when we're at our most raw, our most real, and where we learn the most if we have that permission to go into it. So yeah, I think imagery that kind of promotes that perfect mother, you know, very just glossy image is almost damaging to our psyches, because when you measure yourself against that, you're always going to be failing. But actually, those women, and I'm not trying to put it out there, but you know, those women are the ones who are missing out. They're missing out on that experience and the richness of the spiritual aspect of it by just letting yourself go. Literally, you know, people say, oh, she's let herself go since she's had a child. Yes, you need to let yourself go to find yourself. So yeah, I'm all about that. I'm actually probably still a little bit you know, censoring in my images, because I don't like to put my children's faces on so much. And so, you know, a lot of the pictures that I have just of being at home in the domestic bliss of you know, everyday life don't make the gram, because I try not to put, you know, their faces. But yeah, things and messages and women's stories that talk about the truth of what that is, I think can just only help, because I had no idea. I remember even, you know, people were messaging me to say congratulations, and I was almost going back to them like, why did you not tell me? Like, you're a mother. Why did you not warn me, prepare me, coach me, encourage me? Like, you told me nothing about this. And so we're almost upholding this facade of you know, I've got it all together and I'm doing fine and I put my makeup on and my hair's done and I'm dressed, and you know, it's like, if you feel like that, then that's amazing, and there are things that you can do to allow yourself to feel the best way that you can. But if you don't, honor that as well, and share, because it will help other women who also feel very isolated and alone in that experience.
Good. Yeah, because it was lovely to see that they come out and had a new baby, but I'm like, hang on a minute, it's like she's just had a baby. Yeah. You know, and at least I just had this one step of like, she's just had a baby. Exactly. And I remember watching a clip, you know, the American talk show The View. Yeah. That's got like Whoopi Goldberg and there's like a few other panelists on there as well. And like a couple of them are mothers and are recent mothers as well, and they fell about laughing because they were like, that's not what it was. And they found pictures of themselves at round about the same time period after they'd had their babies, and they were like still sitting in the hospital bed with some like sweaty like inside out t-shirt and the hair all over the place and like this little baby. They looked happy, but she was like, one of them was like, there was no way anyone was going to get me into any pair of shoes or any dress. Exactly.
It's the furthest thing from your mind. But then in the same token, just touching on the hospital experience, you know, both of my children were planned home births. And then for reasons, we ended up in birth centres, which was fine. They were both natural deliveries and a really good positive experience. But I was very aware, being in the maternity ward after each child and feeling like this is also not how it should be done. You know, the glamorization doesn't help, because it's a denying of the reality of the physical reality that has just happened. But the hospital experience is almost like, it's demoralizing. Like, it literally is like, okay, you've gone through the conveyor belt of having the child and now you're on a ward with these women, the food that they have there, the environment, like, you should be in a sanctuary. Like, this is like my vision for Soul Mama, like the Soul Mama sanctuary of birth and postpartum, because you have gone on a spiritual journey and you need to be recognized as such. Like the respect and the honor that should come, and that is still present in some cultures. We don't have that, and that's what makes it so like anticlimactic and just like, what is this? Like, I'm just eating off a paper plate, and people are coming and talking about the baby, and all of a sudden all the attention is the child, and it's like, no, you are the vessel that has created that. You need extra levels of nourishing and care and protection. And I think we're really missing a trick on that. And so if we can recreate that in our own homes, then that's to me is the only way that we can honor that passage in a way that gives it the gravitas that it deserves, because it's not a small thing. It isn't.
I was just like kind of scrolling back on my Facebook as you were speaking, because I remembered, and I just wanted to get the country right, and I found there was a video that was doing the rounds maybe a month or so ago about a postpartum tradition in Morocco.
Yes,
Where have you seen that one?
I
just thought it was like the most beautiful thing. And you were talking about the resetting of the bones and the swaddling of the mother, and the women coming together and just treating her like a goddess, and like oiling her and massaging her and anything like. Is anything like that happening at the moment? Maybe not to that extent, but with those tradition or a traditional kind of coming together of women to help the woman into the transition of motherhood.
So that's exactly that. So that's Layla B, her name is, and she's been kind of doing this resurgence of postpartum tradition, and coming from a Moroccan perspective, which I just found so beautiful to watch the imagery that she's put out around that. And yes, there are cultures that have that integrally within them. It's in South America, in Africa. Those indigenous communities definitely do have that. That process around motherhood from birth and beyond. In the West, there is now, I would call, an outsourcing of that kind of support. So you have postpartum doulas and doulas, women who support you in your pregnancy, and then postpartum doulas come into your home after the birth and do kind of offer that support, but it's not in a coherent way, in a coherent offering. So they may come and do practical things like holding the baby while you take a shower, or cooking some food, or cleaning your house, or some may do massage. But quite often what you find, and what I found personally just researching this, is that you find women specialists in different things. So you can end up, by the time you've decided all the things that you need, you can end up having 8 practitioners in your home within 2 weeks of one person's coming to do the new meals, and one person's coming to do the massage, and one person's coming to do the closing the bones. And I was like, the fact that we've got to a space where we have to pay, this for this service. This was something that midwives did as part of their duty in times past. And it's not to say that, there isn't an energy exchange that's needed, but it just changes the rapport that you've had with that person is obviously going to be very different. That first couple of weeks, I didn't want too many people in my home. So how I managed that was I found women who had as many of those things as possible, who offered as many of those things as possible, so to minimize the numbers of people in my home. But I also did as much myself as I could. So things like healing baths, vaginal steaming, herbal treatments, all of those things that you can prepare in advance even, and, tap into in those first weeks. And again, by telling, your partner or your mum or whoever what you're going to need, doing for you at what particular day. And that doesn't need somebody else to facilitate. But things like abdominal massage and, closing the bones, you can't do yourself. So yeah, by all means, if you have the resource and you've been able to budget, it's so worth bringing women in to do that. And obviously if you have an opportunity to meet them before they're actually going to come into your home and actually, check in with your energy with them and, kind of vet how that feels for you before that vulnerable period, it's even better. But there isn't that coherent service in the UK, at least.
I remember seeing that video, and I just felt really moved by watching it, and simply, and also because it was a complete revelation to me. I hadn't heard of anything like that. But just seeing the way that they treated her when they were, especially the part where they were resetting her bones.
Yeah.
It was like, I had no clue. And then when you think about the way that the Western woman in our society handles having a baby, like when I went through my gym days, there was a woman who dropped a baby one day and the next day she was lifting weights, and we championed her. We thought she was a rock star. We were just like, oh, go for it, man. Amazing. She had a baby yesterday and here she is like pulling up 10K.
I mean, it hurts my heart when I hear that, but I know where women are coming from. There's such a desire to prove to yourself and to others that I've got it. Like, motherhood's not going to change me. Like, I know I can do this, and you just want to get back to your former self as quickly as possible. And as you say, society applauds that. That's what we're holding up as being a good mother, you know. And it's a wound by doing that. I feel like it's more the masculine energy that we're living in this society of, you know, capitalism and patriarchy is like, your worth is tied to your productivity, and your value is tied to what you can do and what you can bring. And so if you feel like you're not doing that, you're not productive, you're not effective in that time, you question your worth. And that's why women need to find their worth outside of that. And it's stepping into what I call the divine feminine, which is the softness, it's the surrendering, it's the allowing, it's the ease, it's not pushing through, it's not ignoring your body's cues, it's not listening to what is actually happening for you. So yeah, I think if women can find that space to come back into that opportunity to reconnect, it serves you so much in the long term, not just in those first few months. You know, that woman who picked up the 10K, it's not to say that that's not going to affect her in her next pregnancy, because the depletion doesn't go away unless you've extra nourished yourself. And it can be 2-3 pregnancies down the line that you then start having complications, or that child ends up being premature, or because your body has not regained the nutrients that you've expended in growing and birthing a child. So it's a dishonor to ourselves if we don't honor that period.
And I wanted to ask you, like, if you could kind of put like one message out there to women who are kind of going down the path of like kind of almost like checking the day that they want to have a baby and going in and getting induced and coming out on X amount of day and then going back to work, you know, and for some people they have to go back to work for you know, either financially or just because it like helps them in their headspace. But if there was something that you could bring into like the populace in terms of what would be useful for them as new mothers, is there like a core message that you'd like to like get out there that would start to soften the way that women just kind of like have them and get on with your stuff?
It's slowing down, you know, really slow down. There are not many opportunities that we as women give ourselves the permission to slow down, apart from birthing a child and when you're sick. You know, like if those are the only times when you're like, okay, do you know what, I can't push through this anymore. You know, even our menstrual cycles, we've learned to, you know, suppress any feeling of weakness that comes with that, and it's again, you know, to our own discredit, because by pushing through and against what is happening naturally, we're not tuning into the depth of the power that we can tap into for ourselves. So there is, I think the main message is to slow down, to turn within. You know, the instinct that we talk about for mothers, this mother's instinct that's supposed to just automatically switch on once you have a child, it doesn't if you're not quietening down. And we haven't necessarily opened those channels before. So by getting into that state and allowing yourself to really turn within and slow down and give yourself the permission to honor the journey, like, it's the greatest gift that you can give to yourself, as a woman and as a mother, and to your child. I mean, my emphasis is on the mother, because by feeding the mother and nourishing the mother, you are feeding and nourishing the child, but it's a benefit to the child as well. Of course, if you're in that space of actually being able to give from a full place, rather than being depleted or stretched or overwhelmed or burnt out, or just feeling like you're pulled in all these different directions and then not really being able to give to your child, it's like, you can switch that. You can really reverse it and actually fill yourself first, then fill your child, and then work, and whoever else can come after that.
What would you say that your children have taught you, the birth of them both?
I think it's they're both such different characters, different spirits. My daughter is a fire. She's fire energy, and she came into this world in a very intense way, and has continued to be an intense presence in our lives. But she really mirrored a lot of the things that I have, I guess, suppressed in my own self-love for myself, like, things that I have wanted to rise above. The perfectionist in me wants to deny, the chaos, and she's just brought it out. There's that sense of like, everything that you've tried to suppress will come to light, and your children will be the catalyst for that journey. So I thank her for that. And then my son is much more of a mellow energy, really calm child. And he just always brings me back to just the peace and contentment. So the two of them have been a lovely balance to be a mother to so far. But that just generally coming into motherhood has really helped me to connect to my own power and my own take up space in the world, seeing how they don't wait. Like, there's no like, oh, Mom, I see you're busy, I'm gonna wait to now ask for my food, or I'm gonna wait to ask for that hug, or I'm gonna wait to take your attention. No, like, they just come and they be and they take, and they, it's their instinct. So for me to then be able to realize that there is places and spaces that I'm not stepping into for myself, that I need to find my voice and really inhabit that fully. I can't give if I'm not in that space of connection. So it has really helped me to connect for myself, and then hopefully be a better mother for them as well.
So good. And will you have any more?
I'm always open. I do believe that, when children come, they have knowledge and they have their own agenda, and they're at the closest to source when they come, So in my conscious awareness of the journey of life, I'm always open to that being the case, but it's not the plan. It's just we shall wait and see if that transpires. I think having two under 3 at the moment is a handful, and there's creativity that I want to express in other ways as well, and that's one thing that I always say about motherhood, is that it's the paradox of tapping into that creative energy, that feminine energy, but then giving you the least amount of time to like actually execute on any of those things. So recently I've been like, okay, I need to carve out some time to be able to channel this energy into ways that can help serve other women. And then I feel like that will balance out some of that desire, because sometimes I'm in the day-to-day of mothering, and my mind is really pushing forward with all the things that I want to do. So I think if I give myself the space to actually do that next year, then there may be space again for another spirit to come and join our family. But for now, I feel like we're full.
Well, it'll do that, I'm sure. Whoever's waiting on the wings for you, if there's another soul or two to come for you, they'll come.
Yes, exactly.
I shall wish that upon you.
They do. They find us when you're ready or not. They're ready. So yeah, that's why I think conception is the you know the ideal beginning, because then you come into that space of awareness, and that's the feeling of shock that comes of like, or unpreparedness that comes with like, oh, you know, I'm pregnant, I didn't even realize, and now I need to get myself ready. It's like, oh well, actually if you start with the intention and you put the feeler out there energetically and spiritually, then you can call into exactly what you do need, and you and that spirit can start to work together from the offset, from the beginning. You know, both my son and my daughter started with that, yes, you know, yes, we're ready, yes, we're calling them in. And I think it just makes for a more conscious journey. So if women have that opportunity, I would definitely encourage it.
That's so good. Did you get a chance to listen to the one with Chelsea?
Yes, I did. It was fascinating. There was just so many experiences in there I was like blown away by. So yeah, really, really beautiful episode, and definitely made me think about some of those moments that I've had as well, and realizing the power in those moments. So yeah, I'm glad that there's other women out there, you know, flagging that level of, you know, spirituality within motherhood. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, I learned so much. I read her book at like rocket speed, and then got to speak to her, and it was like an amazing, fascinating conversation. And as a result of the conversation, I learned as well, as I do with everyone, as I've done with you. So it's always good for me to just speak to all these women, because it's like a constant education in myself. Yeah. So I'm enjoying it, the journey of everything. But to ask you her conversations questions, the first one I want to ask, and I like to ask all the women, is what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given to you?
So when I did my holistic life coaching training, it was with a woman called Caroline Shola Arawa. I don't know if you've heard of her, but she's written a seminal text called Opening to Spirit, and it's basically realigning all of our beliefs around yoga and the chakra system, and kind of replacing it back into Africa as its origin, which I found a really refreshing context. So I chose to do my training with her. And when we were training, I kept on asking questions about like, so what's the optimum way of doing this? And, you know, like trying to really get like all of the theories down, and, you know, being the student that I am, like I wanted to have the best curriculum possible. She always said to me, like, you need to come out of your head. Like enlightenment doesn't happen in your head. It happens when you can drop down into your body and you can listen. And I was like, okay, so how does that work? Like exactly, like, you know, like how many minutes into meditation should I be feeling like that? No, that's my point. Like, you really need to get out of your head. And it keeps on coming up for me, you know. She wasn't the first to say it to me, but the way that she said it to me, and in the space that she said it to me, I think it was the first time I was able to really receive it and realize that so much of what I'm feeling, you know, lack or blocked around is because I'm trying to intellectualize it all. And that's a very, you know, a masculine way of understanding the world, and it has its value, but you need the balance. And for me, I needed to step into the feeling of that, you know, the embodying of that, and the space that comes with just allowing. And it's scary because you want to be in control. I do, at least anyway. And so it's like, I'm not going to let myself go too far over that edge, you know. But actually it's when you can surrender and really let go. And for me, that's what I found to be the most powerful. That's when magic happens. That's when, you know, that's when resonance happens. So that's the best advice I've taken to heart and really tried to practice in my life.
And it's one that you just hear so many times anyway. Surrender, let go, surrender, let go. And we don't live in the world that tells us that that's a safe thing to do, because you've got to be holding onto something, and you've got to be knowing what's happening in like a year, 5 years, 10. So you're just like holding on all the time, as opposed to that letting go. But yeah, I'm working on that with myself as well. And every time I keep hearing it, I'm like, okay, it's not just me working on this. We're all working on this.
Definitely,
it's good.
Definitely. It's unconditioning. It's like we're having to relearn how to be in the world. You know, the way that we've been conditioned in this society is to just exert yourself, you know, beyond any balance. And so to be able to give ourselves the permission to come back into that softness, it's a challenge, but it's a gift.
It's true. And I always that's why I like being around kids so much, because they're just in it. They're in the moment. They at the time, they need food, if they need a hug, if they need to go to the toilet, if they've got something to say to you right there and then, they haven't got that filter yet. It's just exactly. This needs to come out right there and then somehow it gets kind of squeezed out of them, Exactly. So a lot to learn for those little ones. Which woman would you say represents higher energetic resonance?
So yeah, I saw this was one of your questions and I've been mulling it over, and for me it's quite a personal one, but my name Nehanda is actually from Mbaya Nehanda, who is a woman who lived in Zimbabwe in the 1800s, and she was a leader of her people, the Shona people, but she was also a spirit medium. And so she ruled from a place of spirit. And when the British invaded, she first of all welcomed them, and then when she realized what they were actually there to do, she resisted them in the most powerful way, by rallying her people and putting up this resistance, joining tribes and really resisting this invasion. And she got captured eventually, and what the British had her executed, and it took them 7 times to try and execute her. Sorry, we're going on a somber tone here, but she was such a force, and she basically said, my spirit will live on in the heart of a lioness, and so whenever my people need me, they can go to this lioness representation of me, and you can never kill me. And so whenever I get to that space of feeling imposter syndrome, or what am I doing and who am I? And I just really have to come back to Nehanda and who she represents, not just for me, but for so many people. And Mbaya actually means grandmother, and so Zimbabweans still hail her as one of their spiritual leaders. And we all have that power within us. We all have that power of connection, that ability to tap into our energy and to act from a place of power. And so for me, she is that person that reminds me of that. So yeah, if anyone's interested, it's fascinating to read about her just from an African history perspective. But yeah, she's been a constant ancestor for me.
That's so good. And I like that proclamation as someone's just about to chop your head off. I'm not going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
I will never
literally
die. So you just
exactly. It's you still haven't won. You can't kill what can't be killed. So yeah, powerful.
And what's your favorite self-care ritual or practice?
I love baths. I love hot, herbal baths with candles and rose petals and aromatherapy oils and just space. It's like creating a little sanctuary at home, and the healing natures of water for me really, really resonate, whether it's time of the month or after the birth, or even just when I've just had a hard day. I find that water really renews my spirit. And so with the absence of an ocean, living in London, but yeah, I think, being next to the water, I would love to be able to live in a place where I could access the ocean in its natural form, every day. But in the absence of that, the bath helps me. So yeah, that just it eases, and I think allows us to sink into that letting go in the physical sense, and then hopefully transcending into your mental and spiritual as well.
Thank you. So what's coming up next for you then?
So for me right now, I've been honouring these first couple of months with my baby, my son. So I toned down all of my client work, and I used to have women in my home, so I kind of peeled back on that as well. So for me, it's now a ramping back up. So he's now about to be going into nursery next year, and so that's going to give me the space to step back into Soul Mama in its fullest expression. So the website should be coming The groups are continuing, the Soul Mama circles are continuing, and I email women weekly, just with like tips and hopefully some wisdom. So if anybody wants to sign up for those or contact me, Instagram is the best place to find me at the moment, and news of all of those things as they happen will be on Instagram. So I'm at Soul Mama Coach. And yeah, just hoping to continue serving women as best as I can.
That's great. And do you have a website, or you say that's on its way, is it?
It's on its way. So the domain is soulmamajourney.com. It'll have my blog, it will have resources that women can download and do at home, and it will just be the kind of online hub for all of the information that I've collated. Soon come.
Fantastic. Well, Nehanda, thank you for coming on Her Conversations as well. And I pray that the connection and the interview is like as intact as it possibly can be.
Yes,
we kind of got through it. So
thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Problem.
And such great company to be in with all of the women that you've interviewed. It's an honour to be taking part.
Thanks to Nehanda for joining me on this episode of Her Conversations, and thank you for listening. You can discover more about me by visiting my website, carolmaywhittick.com. That's carolmaywhittick.com. And also I want to tell you a bit more about Her Life Academy. This is a new project from me, which is a monthly instruction and inspiration platform for the awakening woman. And it's created for you to magnify your spirituality, your sensuality, your soul, and live in higher energetic resonance. All of this launches in February 2019. So if you visit my current website, you'll find out more details. You'll be able to sign up and gain early bird access and offers. On social media, you can find me on Facebook under Carol May Whittick, and my Instagram name is Kazmick, that's CAZMICK, and also there is an Instagram account for Her Life Academy, so it's at Her Life Academy. I'd also appreciate you leaving a comment, liking, sharing any episodes, and also if you subscribe on the particular platform that you listen to, then you'll be able to be notified as soon as an episode is published. So once again, thank you for listening and enjoy your week. See you next week. Bye.